Welcome to Hip Hop Now Podcast. If you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. Don't disrespect the legend. Hip hop is here to stay. Let's get right into the business. What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast specifically designed to keep you caught up on all things hip hop, music, and culture that happened throughout the week, but this time, that happened throughout the year. Big shout out, first and foremost, to those that have supported this podcast over at patreon.com/hiphopnow. You can click the link in the description, but if you can't help in that way, here's a way you can help. We're trying to get to 500 followers or subscribers on YouTube. Hip Hop Now Podcast made the jump to YouTube in video form in 2023. Slowly building an audience that is hip hop heads that like the conversation, that want to get caught up in news, check out specials and all that good stuff. So what I need you to do is, if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, you should subscribe. And you should tell your friends who dig it too, because I put on a goddamn Santa hat just for y'all. If you're listening in audio form, you might want to check this episode out. I really kind of did it up with the Christmas lights and things in the background that feel like Christmas to me as a hip hop head. Hoodie Vegas in the building. But welcome. 50 years of hip hop. 2023 was 50 years of hip hop. And I must say, as a person who does a best of the year every year, it was a little light. It was a little light for like 50 years of hip hop. There was a lot of albums that I thought were going to drop that haven't. And I hope they don't drop after this video, because guess what? You're not being considered. But just real, we'll talk about that in another episode. The preview to 2024 about those albums that should have dropped, was going to drop, could have dropped, but did not drop. And let's talk about those that did. Now, just to summarize, 2023 musically for hip hop was a very interesting year, a kind of a uneven year. The last couple of years, it's been very easy to have a top five well before we even get to the halfway point of the year, because it was just so much dope music that was being released. This year, it was kind of scattered. We got some joints early, then we got some stuff in the summer. And, it was easy for me to narrow down my top five. Past years, it was always difficult trying to narrow down, what are the best? So let me tell you what I did this year. I've been telling people who watch this podcast leading up to this, but I'm going to say it again for those who may be new here. We are not doing a whole random list of the best of like I used to, right? Just album after album after album after album. So what I did this time is they're going to be 10 albums that I thought were great this year, right? And then there are top five that was literally heavy rotation for me for one or another reason. So the top 10 I'm gonna run through as a list, so you can check joints out, right? Take your notes, if you haven't heard any of them. And the top five, I will expound upon why they were in my top five. You get it? Y'all ready to go? All right, let's do it. So here's the top 10 runner-ups, if you will. Dope albums, rotation throughout the year for me, kind of had an impact or did something of note album-wise that, I felt like, if I had to pick 10, these would be them. Hold up. Do I have 10? Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, cool. Because, I was going back and forth. This list came down to the final hour. This is by no means a 10 that says there weren't other albums that were good. This was what rose to the top for me. So, in no order, here we go. JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown, Scaring the Hoes. Nas, Magic 3, Static Selector, Round Trip, Elzai and Oh No, Vibrato, I think that's how you say it. Sky Zoo and the Other Guys, The Mind of a Saint, ASAP Rock, Integrated Tech Solutions, Lloyd Banks, Halloween Havoc 4, The 72nd Hour, Mick Jenkins, The Patience, Apollo Brown and Planet Asia, Sardines, and Ransom and Nicholas Craven, Director's Scenes 2. Those are 10 albums that you just cannot go wrong with for one reason or another, whether you want bars, whether you want originality, whether you want something different, whether you want traditional hip hop with scratches in it, old, new, thought provoking. It's all there, man. It's all there for you to absorb. But we are here to talk about the top 5. And the top 5 are, for me, not only the best projects of the year for me, but for different reasons, varied reasons. I have a varied palette when it comes to hip hop, right? Some people just want to hear boom bap bars and beats, and that's it. Some people want to hear something conscious. Some people want to hear, not non boom bap, right? Like just varied flows, varied styles. And some people want to hear complete projects, right? When I say complete projects, I mean the concept is there within the music, within the songs, with how the songs come together, the artwork, everything, complete package. I'm the type of person throughout the year in my heavy rotation, it tends to be a variety. You can go back to all my top 5s of the past couple of years, and my top 5 is always a variety because it reflects my taste, just like your top 5 would reflect your taste. So let's get right into it with no delay. Conway the Machine, Won't He Do It? This is a very interesting one to make my top 5 because I wasn't a big fan of it when it dropped. Not because Conway has lost a step lyrically or that I felt like the beats were poor, but just because I felt like he had dropped an album that was a collection of songs when he has proven in the past with past projects that he can go a little deeper than that. But when I tell you, I kept going back to this album. When I tell you, the bar work is the reason why you listen to something like this. And let me just say, the variety within the tracks doesn't bother me. Now, previously, I felt like it started strong and then it got a little weak at the end because there was so many different looks and styles. But over time, man, what's good on here is so good that it makes you want to listen to it. And maybe it's a byproduct of just not having enough really like world smashing albums drop, where this made my top 5 when I initially was like, yeah, it's cool. Well, now it's in my top 5. And I think is in large part due to the lyrical work of Conway the Machine. This dude is just dope. He's entering the Pusha T phase, right? Where Pusha T can talk about cocaine in so many different ways that you think you would get tired of hearing him talk about it, but you never do. Because it's not just the wordplay, but it's the execution of that, right? It's how those words come together, the inflection in his voice, right? So it's the same thing with Conway, right? It's always sounds like he means what he's saying. And that's kind of like half the battle to get you to buy in as a listener. You know what I mean? But what I found is listening to this album, man, I just, I had that initial 3 listens. I gave my review, went back again, and voila, here I am, just putting it in my top 5, feeling kind of weird because I Didn't think it would be here, but it is. So shout out to Conway the Machine. Next, Mickey Diamond, Nobody Bleeds Like Flair. I don't care if I'm the only dude who likes this project this much. Yes, he dropped a couple of joints this year, but this is the one that stood out for me from day one. Let's just talk production. The production, the skits, not necessarily skits, but the sound bites from Ric Flair, from films, they're all so well placed. You hype when you got to clap. They well placed, right? When like you're locked in from day one, right? From the minute you press play. That's what it was for me. Mickey Diamond is a MC where I don't feel like I was blown away by his bars, but that's just the thing. His voice, his style of rapping, what he had to say fit the aesthetic of this album perfectly, right? And this was my first time listening to this dude. And I'm a wrestling fan from way back. I love the Ric Flair from back then. Might even get the big gold belt. Don't judge me. Uh, but it had a little bit of nostalgia, and we know Griselda and a couple of people. We know they did the wrestling thing also, but there was just something about this project in particular that, for one, it's not a very long project, right? So you can just straight let it run. I think it's like 30 minutes, 31 minutes or whatever. So you could just let it rock. And it just had a repeat value for me where, I forget when it dropped, but I know during the summer I was heavy with this. You driving, it's just a vibe. And I hate to say that. Not that it's a bad thing, but as an older cat, I don't want to just summarize everything as a vibe without any context. I'm just saying it was a vibe that I was into so much that it was on heavy rotation. And one thing I did with these top fives is I went back and listened to them, including the top 10, just to be sure my feelings were the same. And when I pressed play on Mickey Diamond, Nobody Bleeds Like Flair, nothing changed for me. It was just like listening to it for the first time, the 10th time, what summer, winter, fall, it didn't matter. Nothing changed for me because I was just like, yeah, man, this was just one of those albums that stayed in heavy rotation. It still is to this day. So there you have it. No Name, Sundial. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be, I was listening to her when she first dropped, I'm not an original fan. And I've heard music from her before and was like, okay, cool. But this one really struck a chord with me, right? Because I learned a little bit more about her fan base, the controversy that surrounds her, the controversy that surrounded her having Jay Electronica on her album, who some consider to be anti-Semitic. But for me, it's not about that. Sure, the messages are the messages. Sure, it's probably her beliefs. But this is a well-produced album. Her lyrics are so potent. There's a little bit of an edge to her as far as, taking shots at other artists and her own views. And I just don't think we get enough of that in hip hop on this level, right? We just don't. She doesn't get mentioned a lot when it comes to female MCs, even though she's pretty dope at what she does. You could tell that regardless of whether you agree with her or not, her lyrics are well thought out and she delivers them in that way. So it comes across less about, how ill was she when she said this and that, and more about listening to her and feeling the vibe of the hooks and the beats. And I like the album because it's not necessarily one thing or another. It's a simple vibe that I can only assume suits her personality, her music, her delivery. Do I have an opinion on things she said, that may be politically incorrect? I really don't, because trust me, I'm a hip hop head from way back. I listen to a bunch of stuff you probably shouldn't listen to. But I view hip hop as twofold, right? For one, for me, first and foremost, is entertainment. And two, if somebody has a point of view that either I'm impartial to, or uh, maybe I don't disagree, or maybe I just feel like I don't have a dog in the fight, whatever the case may be, I just feel like, cool, she said what she said. Death Certificate is my favorite album of all time. You already know. It doesn't mean that I agree with everything being said, but I do appreciate the freedom of speech to have an opinion. And trust me, there's freedom of speech for you to have a rebuttal. But I just feel like this was a very dope album. And I think even though her fan base does not typically look like us, those that look like us who may have been sleeping should check her out. Sundial's pretty dope to me. Ransom and Nicholas Craven, director's cut 4. Y'all looking for bars? Conway had some bars, but some people didn't like some of the beats. But if you wanted that kind of lyrical technique with all boom bap, this is it. You want to talk about an album that from the first song, I was like, this one's special. This man's special. Nothing he drops since the past couple of years is whack. Nothing. It's difficult not to have this man have 3 or 4 entries in my best of 2023, because he could easily. He has 2. He's the only one that has 2, and somebody else on the other list dropped an album this year that did not make this list because I didn't like it that much. But Ransom and Nicholas Craven, they have the chemistry, man. They got that Dr. Dre and Snoop kind of chemistry. You know what I'm saying? Like Guru and Premier, Mobb Deep, whatever, RZA and the Woo. Like, they have the beats and the concepts just fit so well. You know what I'm saying? And Ransom, when you listen to a do rhyme like this, I had to pause for a second, because I gotta let y'all know, if you don't know. When you listen to a dude who's writing like this, you know this man pays attention to everything, and he thinks deeply about life and things around him and things in the culture. He's active on social media, and he pours it into his music. You just wish more MCs would do that, right? Because I feel sometimes, again, this is in my top 5, but I feel like, let's just say Conway the Machine is one of my favorite rappers, right? Sometimes there's just certain things being said that's always been said, but it's being said in a different way. Whereas Ransom, I start to feel like, damn, I don't think he talked about the same thing twice in projects. He's just the rapper's rapper, right? Like, if you really want to hear bars, you want to be amazed, you want to discover things, how somebody put words together, you want some concepts. This is a short little project, but it was so dope, man. It was like really that dope. And I think it's called Director's Cut for Rise of the Machines, because it has like a Terminator vibe to it. But again, the minute I heard this, heavy rotation sense, like, I could not stop playing it. Again, y'all know I like albums that tend to go by quick enough where you just like, that was good, run it back. Not that every project has to be that, but a number of projects, or maybe 3 projects on this top 5, kind of did that for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, they just were that good, and they weren't like no almost 2-hour listen with 30 something songs where you kind of lose the steam of the album. You can listen to this straight through. Ransom is that dude. Working with Nicholas Craven it just turned out to be a dope run for those, that love this type of music. and should be talked about more. I know we talk about Nas and Hit Boy, but Ransom and Nicholas Craven kind of got a nice series of dope, maybe even classic to somebody projects. So that's my top four. So it's Conway the Machine, Won't He Do It, Mickey Diamond, Nobody Bleeds Like Flair, No Name, Sundial, and Ransom and Nicholas Craven, director's cut for Rise of the Machines. And because of all the albums I named, you already know what the last one is. Killer Mike, Michael. Now, I wasn't the biggest Killer Mike fan before Run the Jewels. I thought he was cool. I thought he could rhyme, but the projects never connected with me. Solo projects, I know there's people who swear about some of his solo projects prior to this one, and I always thought they were cool, but they never really resonated with me enough for me to run it back so much or listen to it all the time. But Michael is his magnum opus. Michael, in my opinion, is his best solo album. I don't care what you say. This is the culmination of a man who had a certain level of success before Run the Jewels, had the Run the Jewels success, and figured it out for an album that's personal, that's part Southern, part boom bap, that has a variety of music, part political and lyrics, which he's always been, hardcore storytelling, you name it. It is the most relatable album on this top 5 list, just based off of the stories of his life and dealings that a lot of people can probably relate to on a deep level. I just did not expect this album to be this good. Like, it just really was. And I know some people may feel, otherwise, like, yeah, but you should check out this, or was it better than this or that? I just think Michael is one of those special albums where the concept, the lyrics, the beats, the choices and samples, the quality, the sound quality of the album, everything just comes together on this project. And usually, typically, those are the albums that we call classics because they're just a perfect storm of everything, right? When we think about Into the 36 Chambers, right? The quality wasn't crazy, but the grunge was the attraction, right? The sound not being, processed, to the CD world at the time, I guess, and cassettes, but just sounding real grimy and dirty and unprocessed and just hip hop in the projects with a mic and a sheet up. Like, that's what it felt like. The lyrics matched it and everything. So sometimes it doesn't have to be all of these polished things to be something special. It's just how everything works together. And I think Killer Mike on this album, he just head and shoulders to me. I knew the first time I heard it, I was like, this is in the top 5, and there's no way, and something crazy would have to happen in order for it to come out of my top 5. And as you can see, it's right here within the top 5. So there you have it. That's my best of 2023. 10 albums you could check out. But to me, 5 that are the best, that are the cream of the crop. What's in your best of 2023? Is there an album I didn't name that you think I should reconsider as far as listening to? I'm not changing my list. No, I'm not. But I love listening to music. I love discovering new music. So leave your comments in the comment section below. Do you agree with Michael? Because I know Killer Mike's album is like probably in almost everybody's top 5 or best of the year. But you may feel differently. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Please know that this podcast will continue into 2024, but I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers on YouTube. So I need you to jet over and click that link if you're listening on audio so you can be subscribed. If you just like to listen to audio, turn the video on and turn your back. Okay? You can listen, right? Hit the like button, comment. I respond to comments. But most importantly, it is a time for giving and a time for sharing. The easiest, the best way, the way that won't cost you a dime is to share on your social media platforms, on Discord, on Reddit, on Twitter. I'm never going to say X. Sorry. On wherever. If you feel strong enough and you enjoy this enough, I appreciate your support. You can follow me on social media at Vegas World INC. Doesn't matter where you go, I'm on everything. Same name, everything. And rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts if you listen. Trying to get my ratings up. That's going to do it for me. There probably won't be a new episode unless there'll be a special. But if I don't see you, happy holidays and happy New Year. Remember, I'm not a critic. I'm a fan. And I got a do-rag and a hoodie and a Santa hat on. And I'm not coming through the chimney. Peace.